Welcome to Retire Hour, the weekly show discussing income planning, investing, tax planning, estate planning, and Medicare. Complete retirement education. Hear from our financial advisors, CPA, estate planning attorney, and Medicare advisor every week. This is Retire Hour.
Welcome into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape that is retirement. And you hear the little giggle in my voice. It's like we've had some interesting volatility in the markets these past weeks because tariffs are going to be the negotiation tool of this current administration. I'll be talking more about that as that goes on. But don't miss, later in the show, we'll have Jonathan McCoy, advisor with the Market Advisor Group Kansas City. He's in studio this week with us. We'll be chit-chatting with him about a client. I believe it's Dana and Keith. And then Larry Clefcorn, he'll be talking with us about 401ks, IRAs, and how this person that's still working and knowing when is best to start consolidating all those accounts. Coming up on the Medicare portion, we'll be talking with Mark about a client story there. We'll be talking with Doug Schauder with Eidelman Law Firm about some estate planning common problems that people have with trusts. And then finally, to round out with our lead tax advisor, Joshua Sikora, how to choose a tax preparer, because it's tax time, guys. Don't forget to be looking out in the mail for all those documents coming. You don't want to misplace those. But back to what's going on in the world right now is Trump's using tariffs to be a negotiating tactic. And, you saw the markets have a lot of volatility, and that volatility is fine when you're saving for retirement because you're not maybe needing those funds or those monies. But as you get into retirement, and as Larry will talk about it, he calls it the red zone or the
retirement red zone.
Retirement red zone. That's it. Yeah, I'm not a sports guy. Sports ball. Hey, big game this weekend. But you've got where people don't maybe want all that volatility, or they realize, hey, this is all the money I have. This is my nest egg. I need to take care of it and protect it, or make sure I'm not having these wild swings in the market. And probably volatility is going to be the theme, if you will, for the next.
Yeah, and we were talking even before election season, one of the biggest risks around how much cash is just present in the economy, the risks around inflation, how stubborn is that going to be over the next 4 or even 8 to 10 years. And, if you're concerned about the volatility in the market, do you become more conservative as inflation remains high, and then maybe your investments don't keep pace with the inflation? It's sort of a rock and a hard place, and we don't play the game of trying to predict exactly what the market's going to do. It's making sure that you have that game plan coming up on the big game is appropriate time to talk about it in place ahead of time.
Well, and I wanted to take it and expand a little further because maybe some of these listeners out there, I voted for Trump, but maybe some of the listeners out there are saying I support Trump, I support what he's doing. You have to still recognize if they're going to really trim down the government, the way they're talking, cutting positions, cutting down spending, that's going to have a ripple effect.
Widespread economic impacts, not just on the market, but employment and or unemployment rates. Because if you fire 350,000 federal government employees nationwide, that has a massive impact on the labor force.
There's going to be ripple effects, and if you are retired, you really don't want to subject yourself to all this up and down volatility.
Correct.
Maybe, do you think it's better for the long term? Yes. But in the short term, you could get cut up and chopped up in a lot of this.
It's going to be a painful process.
Well, you and I have been to the lake. when those big boats come through.
Yeah.
And the water
avoid the wake.
The wake is good. It'd be killer for some of these folks. And there's strategies out there that people can engage that they don't have to deal with a lot of this volatility, that they can still participate in the lion's share of the market, but then they have some buffers on the downside or some trigger. There's a lot of different strategies, but so many people are just riding all the ups and the downs.
Exactly. One of the issues is, we look all the way back to 2008, the financial crisis, where market goes through a major downturn, but you still have to generate the income off of your portfolio that you need to live on. And, you hear about these things, the 4% rule and all that. Well, what if 4% of half of your account value isn't enough for you to live on? So that's what I'm really discussing with a lot of folks, is putting that game plan in ahead of time. We know the market is going to drop and continue to be volatile. At some point, we just don't know when. The key is having that contingency plan and that strategy, some of those investments that have some downside protection and different things like that we talk about in our consultations, to make sure that you are not forced to ride that wave when it gets ugly. We know those times are coming, and most of our clients are going to be retired for 20, 30, and sometimes even 40 years. There are going to be multiple market downturns, and it's not just going to be because of the current administration. Global economies are going to be changing. There's a lot of technologies coming online these days that everything's going to be changing a lot. And, the stock market is not always the best positioned to keep up with those changes. And sometimes that short-term panic can have very long-term effects.
Well, I was reminded of a client that he came in a couple of weeks ago and he said, Matt, I voted for Trump. I support what he's doing. I can't afford to lose 30 or 40% of my portfolio if the market decides to react negatively or something. And I said, no, you're spot on. This is a concern that sometimes we have to educate people they have, but it was a concern that he had, and he wanted to know, was he going to be okay if the market had a 20 or 30% pullback? We walked through those scenarios, and that's just it. He wanted to see that he had the peace of mind where if the market kept making money, he could keep making money. But if we had some massive pullback, there were some things in place.
There's got to be an alternative strategy there.
And again, it's a different mindset. And Robert was right to think about it that way because Robert's not working anymore. Robert has retired. Robert has retired now for 2 years. And he's thinking to himself, this is all the money I have. And I can't really stomach a 20, 30, 40% loss and then wait for it to come back 6, 7, 8, 9 years. But all the while, again, if the country needs medicine, you got to make sure you don't get all the side effects.
It affects everyone equally. What's different is how people react. It's, some people are in support of the process of trying to downsize the federal government. Some people may look back and say, I told you so. We're all, feeling this financial pain together. And ultimately, you've really got to zoom all the way into your personal and household financial situation to make sure that you've taken those steps ahead of time. Because again, we're not sitting here telling people the market's going to crash, the market's going to crash. I mean, I've heard that from financial advisors before, and the reality is nobody knows how severe it may be or when it's going to happen or why. And that's why we have to put these plans in place ahead of time so that you can deal with things while the situation is good, while the market is cooperating, if you will, but also deal with your financial situation when the market is not cooperating because you don't want to be left holding the bag.
And so if you're thinking to yourself out there, if you're listening or you're watching, man, I want to participate in the market if it has some rewards or some gains, but I don't know if I'm retired or I'm getting close to retirement, maybe I shouldn't be taking all this volatility. And if you're thinking to yourself, are you taking too much volatility? You can reach out and go through our report process, but maybe you just need a 15-minute call just to ask some questions about what's going on in your situation. You can do that by calling 833-MAG-REPORT, or that's 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have a 15-minute chat with you just to discuss what's going on. I've had several just this past week, and thank goodness I was sick, so I could do these calls from home, and met so many of you guys by phone. Looking forward to meeting you in person. But again, back to that 15-minute phone call. So many people benefit from just asking a couple of questions and seeing if really they could benefit from going that full-blown process. That number again is 833-MAG-REPORT, or that's 833, the letters MAG-REPORT. Or you can go over to our website at retirehour.com. Well, stay tuned. We'll be continuing this conversation with Jonathan McCoy right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, a weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement, not just investments, not just the economy, but there's more to your investments than just, or there's more to your retirement than just the investments. And we're here with Jonathan McCoy, and I pronounced your name wrong. Deanne and Keith, not Dana and Keith. This is someone that this is a long lasting relationship that you've been working with, and they're just kind of coming to the point where they're realizing, there's more to this retirement than just the investments, isn't there?
Yeah, Keith has always been sort of a steadfast, long-term, stay-in-the-market type investor, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And really, they've gotten themselves into the position where, in their current lifestyle, they're okay living on their Social Security benefits. And Keith has kind of gone from full-time to part-time and now probably not working anymore because two major things changed in their lives over the last year, which was Keith's father passed away early last spring, and then Keith was in a fairly significant car accident, was in the hospital for about a month.
Rough year for Keith.
Probably not going back to work after this. And, two of the things that we addressed, we just had their most recent review just a few days ago, and we were able to bring in, for one set of concerns, we brought in our life and long-term care expert, Kim Sixkiller. She's been on the show. She's been on our TV show a few times, but she works side by side with us and our clients to make sure that, in the event that Keith's wife, Deanne in this case, if her health continues to decline because she's been dealing with a chronic disease for years and years and years, that, Keith, especially after this car accident, he's physically a little less capable of doing some of the things. He's lost some strength. He's lost a little bit of mobility. In general, he's okay. But if that situation continues to progress, Deanne's probably going to need some health care in the home, ideally staying in their home. So we brought in Kim to talk about how they might be able to leverage some of the assets, both from the inheritance from Keith's dad, but also their retirement portfolio that they've been steadfast about staying invested, continuing to contribute. But then, Keith's ultimate concern is, having gone through this estate distribution process for his father last year and seeing what him and his sisters had to go through, 6 to 8 to 10 month process. What position is that going to leave his kids in if something happens to Keith and Deanne in this situation? So we brought in Doug, our estate planning attorney, who we're going to be talking to a little bit later in the show. Being able to sit around the conference table with, myself as his, 6 to 7 years, we've been working together as financial advisor and investor. And we had, Riley, our client concierge, making sure that we were keeping up to date on all the notes for their situation. But then Kim and Doug really took over that conversation. They originally came in to talk a little bit more about the retirement portfolio, but being able to leverage those departments in one conversation and hash out what do we need to do to get the right estate plan in place, and what do we need to do to at least start the conversation on addressing that risk that a long-term care event could really have a negative impact on their portfolio value.
So here you are, you're Keith's financial advisor. You've been that way for 6, 7 years now.
You actually had his first meeting with us way back when.
You were telling me that at the break. I'm like, oh, I vaguely do remember this couple. Filled in for you in Kansas City. Was that, I don't know what you were doing. Anyways, so this is someone you've been working with for a long time. They come to their financial advisor with, oh, well, we just lost my dad last year and I've been in a wreck. I need to probably do some things for estate planning. And, they're having these questions. Normally, a financial advisor is not a licensed attorney or allowed to practice any kind of estate planning. So the tragic thing that normally happens in this instance is the advisor refers them to someone and sends them on their way.
Here's a business card to go check these folks out, right?
That's not normally very customer service oriented, number one. But number two, you really are pushing that person off and it's not your problem anymore.
Yeah. And it's my duty to understand that, getting another quote unquote insurance agent involved, which is a little bit how Kim in this circumstance is going to be working with them, but also the estate planning attorney, Doug, some of the things that they put in documentation for them as a family are going to have an impact on how things are titled, beneficiary listings, distribution instructions. Because if Keith and Deanne's kids come to us with death certificates and we have no idea what their estate plan, how their estate plan is organized, what happens with the house, what happens with the retirement accounts, what happens with the bank and savings and CDs, most of the time a financial advisor can handle maybe one of those areas of concern, which is, okay, well, here's who is listed as beneficiaries on the retirement accounts. But, part of our job also in having Kim and Doug work together is Kim's also building a plan and a strategy to help preserve the value of their estate. Because otherwise, if there's nothing left, why have an estate plan, right?
Well, and sometimes if one spouse has a long-term care event, it can really drain the nest egg or the portfolio. Then when that spouse passes away, they're down a Social Security check, and maybe the portfolio is substantially drained or gone altogether. Right. And these are things that I'm glad it's kind of been a wake-up call for Keith in some ways, where it's been a rough year. But this is just another classic example of how the retirement system is broken in America.
Right.
Had Keith gone to a regular, I don't know, Wells Jones advisor on the corner or whatever, you pick your dime store advisor.
It's not to begrudge other advisory services. It's just a matter of what situation and lifestyles are they expected to
You
support.
cut me off. It's why the system's broken is where I was going with that, is because these other firms, they're not bad. You're right. They're not. It's not their fault. But it's the government's fault because there's so much regulation from the financial advisor standpoint of, you better not say this, you can't say that. Well, you're not licensed to give tax advice, or have you stayed up on all the Medicare changes? There's so many things that can have impacts and a ramification to the people we help. And that's why, again, it's broken, because it puts all the responsibility on the retiree's shoulder when they don't have a clue what's going on here. And the laws change. Laws change sometimes. You know that?
All the time. And they have to play the game of telephone or try to become sort of the at-home expert. It's just not possible. This is why we have other experts in-house to help us and give us just direction as advisors. And we kind of generally understand how these things work. And our clients are coming to us. Those retirees are coming to us to make sure that we're not letting those things fall through the cracks.
Well, and it's a lot easier to get your arms around them when you can look at all the same people around the same table and have the conversation once, instead of having it with your advisor once and then going and having it with an estate planning attorney and then going and having it maybe with a tax advisor or CPA, or maybe going. This is why, again, it's broken. And most people I meet in retirement or that are looking at retirement, they want to retire. They don't want to change jobs. They don't want to learn our job to stay up to date on all this stuff as it changes. And worse yet, it really boils down to, how do you know what you don't know? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that resource that you can ask, it's scary, let alone it can be expensive because people find costly mistakes later.
And so many of those what ifs that we bring to folks' attention, they say, well, we never thought about that before. We didn't know that this was going to potentially become an issue, because you've got to learn a ton as a retiree for how your financial and personal life changes after retirement as opposed to while you're working, because then you're earning a paycheck, the income's there, and it's not just about making sure that the income's always going to be there. It's that, the government doesn't get too involved in your tax situation, that, you don't wind up leaving yourself exposed to these, unaddressed risks like long-term care costs and all these other things. Being able to talk to all those professionals in one place is really what we hang our hat on. And we've seen how it massively improves the outcome for each of these households, being able to have these different professionals communicate.
And guys, if you're listening out there and you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm frustrated because when I've gone to my advisor, they've sent me elsewhere when I had tax questions, or they referred me to someone else, or they told me they couldn't help me with that. If you're thinking to yourself, what could I be missing because it's my responsibility to stay up on all this stuff? If you're thinking, have you been missing anything? Reach out and schedule a 15-minute call just to have a chat with us. You can do that at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or again, that number is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Had someone the other day say, you left off the A on that. But you could schedule that 15-minute call with us to get a time there at the comfort of your home or your office or wherever you're at. We do it by phone. And just to have a chat there with people. I had someone the other day that had a pension question. It was great. I mean, with Capers, and they wanted to know about that.
Sometimes it's just learn a little bit.
It's just that little question. And don't hesitate. Reach out and schedule that 15-minute call today, or you can do it by going to our website at retirehour.com. But that number is 833-MAG-REPORT, or 833, the letters MAG, report. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with Larry Clefcorn talking about a client that had some questions about consolidating all of his retirement accounts. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on the ever-changing landscape of retirement. We've been out at some home shows lately, the one in Overland Park and also the one in Wichita, Kansas. And I mistook this question. I thought this was from someone you met with, but this is actually a question we got from the home show, or a listener question. We give out, the cups and the hats and the umbrellas and the stuff.
And we get some really good questions.
We do, and they get some really good swag in return, because the chapstick and the chip clip was the main mover when I was working the booth. So this is a great question from someone that was attending the home show. And I'm going to guess it's the Wichita home show because it's Bob from Wichita. I have several accounts, IRAs, Roth, 401ks. I'm 63 years old and I'm still working. How and when is it best to start consolidating? And that was a question, again, from Bob from Wichita, Kansas. Thanks, Bob, for that question, and thanks for checking us out there at the home show. But I have my thoughts on this. I'm sure you have your thoughts on this. So let me hear what's your thoughts on this.
There's never a better time than now. I mean, he's in the sweet spot in terms of his age. He's not yet planning to step out of the workforce. So that's actually helpful. To start getting everything lined up. I go back to this. I know I've said it in your presence before, but one of the clients that I have, in the very first meeting we had with him, and he's an optometrist, and he said, I just don't want to stumble into retirement. And I thought that's a great way to put it. Yeah. I think lots of people have that same, thought, maybe just didn't have those words. And so it is a good idea to start consolidating smaller accounts. And look, you don't have to pull all of them together into one account.
That's kind of where I was going, because it says IRA, Roth, and 401k. I mean, they've got that bracketed, and to me, Well, you can't combine an IRA and a Roth.
Right.
You don't want to. And
Right.
so there are some tax consequences, because if you have different tax types of money, whether it's pre-tax or tax-free or tax-deferred or however you want to look at it, then you can't combine those. You wouldn't want
Right.
to. Well, you could.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to.
Big bomb.
Yeah, big tax bomb. So, but this is a question like you, and then I echo everything you're saying. I've seen people that have changed jobs several times in their lifetime, and they will leave all those old accounts over there. I guess in some ways it's good that they've left them to continue to grow, but really, oftentimes what I find is a lot of them are in those cruddy target funds.
Yes.
And they're not really doing much for the client. But I'll give them credit that they haven't cashed it out and bought a boat with it or anything.
Right.
So, I mean,
Right.
but back to Bob's question, how and when is it best to start consolidating? You touched on it, and I said it earlier. I'm not sure if you were listening. I used your retirement red zone thing.
Okay.
And he is certainly in that retirement red zone, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
63.
Sure sounds like it.
I mean, his full retirement age would be 67 if he's 63 right now. So he's within that 5-year window. And as people get in that 5-year window, what are maybe some of the things you recommend that they start doing or paying attention to in case like Bob?
Well, I certainly would want to find out where they are on the risk spectrum, and then I want to make sure that they are properly invested for wherever they are on that spectrum. Look, you don't want to spend your lifetime, 35, 40 years, 45 years. You don't want to spend your lifetime accumulating these funds, doing a great job. Some people say, well, I just don't even look at it and look what it's turned into. Now's the time to kind of start looking at it. If that's been your process.
Well, and I completely agree. And just to continue on that thought process, I had someone in that vein just, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, max, in the office. They watched the TV show, and they're in these target funds, and they said, I watch them drop off, but they don't really come back as fast as the market does. And I said, yeah, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
But they never would have really known that had they not started getting their act together, maybe like Bob's kind of considering here, and like you're talking with the retirement red zone. And if people aren't really focused on that, that can really sneak up on them. And like you said, the optometrist that said, I don't want to stumble or into retirement, we meet a lot of people that it's kind of a triage where it's kind of like a MASH unit. You're helping them. Maybe they were forced into retirement and they didn't expect it, or maybe they lost their job or their health declined. And if you guys are thinking out there, am I really ready for retirement? If you're within about 5 years, or even if you're on the other side and you've only been retired for 5 years or less, there's things you still need to consider, because retirement's very different than while you're still working. And if you don't know if you have everything where you need it, reach out and schedule a 15-minute call with us, 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can go to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com. We love taking these questions from you. If you have any listener questions, you can feel free to submit them there. Stay tuned, because after the break, we'll be back with Mark Benefill talking with Mary about someone who had a bunch of Medicare questions, and she saw this ad on TV, so it had to be legitimate, right? You won't want to miss this. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more right after this. Into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement. And yes, I'm a financial advisor, but so often I get questions that are really outside my lane, but it's because the person is retired or retiring. Really, it should be in my lane, but it's hard to stay up to date on all these different government rules and programs and taxes and changes. And we've got Mark Benefill. We're here with Market Medicare Advisors, and you have a story about Mary who called the office because she saw something on TV, right?
Yeah, and when Mary called, she was a little hot under the collar, because she thought that I had left some information out when the last time we had met, when we picked her plan that she had for Medicare. And she was talking to her friends, and her friend had been telling her about all these extra benefits that she was getting. She was getting help to pay some rent, and she had some extra funds, over-the-counter benefits and things to help pay for food and groceries. And Mary wanted some of that. And so she called, and as we started talking, found out that not only had her friend told her about that, but she had also recently seen a television commercial that talked about the same stuff. And she wanted to know, what was going on, and quite frankly, who my boss was.
So this was she? I know enough to know. I think where you're going. Was she calling about a Medicare Advantage plan?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. She had selected for her specific situation. She had selected an Advantage plan during our last time, and what she had heard about was, we've all seen these ads. You see a lot of these ads. There's football players on TV, and they're talking about all these things that you could get, and the thing that you always forget is that, there's always that writing all there at the bottom is that all plans are not available in our areas. Please check your local, whatever. And the reality is that those plans do exist in the marketplace. They do go by zip code by zip code. You tend to have a tendency to see plans that have all those extra things in it usually around larger metropolitan areas.
Yeah. Not Great Bend, Kansas, probably.
Correct. Or in this case, someplace closer to Wichita, but still a little bit outside of town, without giving away, her residence. But those plans do exist. And typically they're designed for the term that we use, which is a dual needs plan, is what it's called. And typically they're designed around people that are on both Medicaid and Medicare. So there's a income threshold that somebody has to be under to be eligible for that. And
my guess was Mary was not.
And Mary was not. I mean, Mary had she had retirement income, but she also had a few investments that gave her a little bit more income. It definitely put her outside of the eligibility for Medicaid. And we were able to determine that by asking some questions and looking at some things. And I'm not the final arbitrator on Medicaid, but we certainly know what some of those income guidelines are and can help guide people.
So this is a situation you probably run into a lot because of all the information that is out there.
Correct.
It's hard for a Medicare beneficiary or someone that's going on Medicare to really cut through the noise to know what's going on in their situation.
And I get this question almost every seminar that we do. In fact, I just did a seminar last week up in, I forgot where I was at. Gladstone, Missouri. And very well attended. A lot of people there that day. I had actually a couple of those questions. It's pretty common because you get the postcards and you get the mail and the phone calls and the television commercials, and they're all, and not all, but a lot of them are touting this type of dual needs plan, and then when you call about it and say, hey, I want that, they say, oh, well, you're not eligible, and then they simply just try to flip you into another plan that they have.
You mean it's like a bait and switch?
Well,
I said it, you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, it's not a marketing practice that we deploy here at our company. And
this is the danger that a lot of people run into trying to get advice from their friends or just doing things. Medicare is I have found such a niche. Niche isn't the right word. It's such a specific need for people that have so many ramifications. If I was a financial advisor and I tried to be your Medicare advisor and your financial advisor, I'd almost guarantee you I'd be dropping the ball in one area, if not both.
Yeah. How do you keep up on it? And expertise. When you're a jack of all trades and
master of none,
right?
Yeah.
And while we have some functional knowledge, I have a little bit of an ear if somebody mentions something about retirement or annuities or insurance, stuff like that, just enough to say, you know what? Sounds like maybe I should introduce you to someone else in our company, or maybe somebody says I need a will or same thing. So I don't pretend to be an expert in any of those areas, but I know who the experts are and how easily they are to get to.
So continuing back to Mary's story here, because I got us off track. That's my fault. What happened with Mary's story? Did you get her calmed down? Or was she on the right plan for her?
After I was able to explain, actually sit down with her and explain to her what those types of programs were, how you become eligible. She was actually thankful that she wasn't eligible, which means she enjoyed a little bit, increased income from the minimum. And while she wasn't necessarily happy that she wasn't able to access those additional benefits, she was thankful grateful that she had a place to go that could explain the stuff to her in a way that she could understand respectfully. And like I said, wasn't happy, but she did leave happy with the fact that she had made the right choice for her, during our last annual enrollment period.
And that's makes me smile that you guys can help make sense of this stuff, because that's really what it boils down to. It's so confusing on its own, and you don't know what's right for your situation. You go out there and search the internet. How do you even know what to search for? God forbid you're using AI to pick your Medicare plans. Just yet. It's getting there, but this is something that, because of all the marketing information out there, it's easy for people to get confused on what qualifies for them and what system they're talking about in Medicare, right? Because we haven't even talked about supplements in this story.
Exactly. You talked about just a moment ago AI and picking plans, et cetera. There's some things that AI just can't do, and one of the things it doesn't understand necessarily is customer service and what level of customer service and the anecdotal information we get back from clients on which plans are working well, which ones aren't, which ones are returning phone calls, which ones are difficult. And all that adds up into, when you're deciding, what kind of plan to take.
And guys, if you're thinking out there, man, I'm getting this age where I'm going to have to be picking a plan here soon. I need to get started with this. Or maybe you've been on a plan for a long time and you don't know if you're still on the right plan for you. If either of those situations are you, reach out and schedule a 15-minute call with one of our Medicare advisors today, just to see if you could benefit from going through maybe a full-blown appointment with them. And you can do that at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that number again is 833, the letters MAG for Market Advisory Group Report. We'd love to have that chat with you by phone. It's convenient. And if you need a follow-up appointment, we can transfer you to someone to get that scheduled. Or again, maybe the timing's not right and you're just kind of feeling some things out, need to get a couple questions answered. You can do that by making that 15-minute phone call or going over to our website at retirehour.com. Well, stay tuned. We're going to go up to Kansas City and talk with Doug Schauder, one of the estate planning attorneys up there with Eidelman Law Firm, talking about some trusts. Stay tuned right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement, not just the investments. Don't settle for just one part of your retirement. There's more to the retirement than just the investments. And speaking about that, we're going to go up to Kansas City now and talk with one of our estate planning attorneys in Kansas City, Doug Schauder. You're with Eidelman Law Firm, and I know we're going to talk about some common problems that people have with trusts, but I was just teaching a estate planning class before I got sick, week and a half ago. And I had a gal come up to me afterwards and she said, well, my family, my parents had a trust and we've never had so much money or hard time getting money out of this trust that we never want to trust for our family. Trusts are different. They're not cookie cutter. They're not carbon copies out there. Well, I guess some of them could be, but most of the time trusts are unique in their own right. But then that sometimes leads into unique problems or maybe some issues that people have with trusts, right, Doug?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the problems that come up are when folks have a trust and they don't really know what they have. And I think a lot of that problem kind of boils down to the fact that when folks are getting their trust initially set up, they meet with an attorney for, a time or two to talk about setting up the trust. And then once the trust is set up, there's not a lot of service after the sale, shall we say. They don't really work with the folks in how to actually operate the trust and how to use what they have.
So true. I mean, this is, again, another classic example. We were talking about this with Jonathan McCoy a little earlier. Why the system, or I call the retirement system in America, is broken, because me as a financial advisor or Jonathan as a financial advisor, if we were just doing this on our own, we'd have our clients come to us or people that are seeking our help. We maybe set them up with their investments and get them set and squared that way. But then they have questions about, well, do I need a trust or how do I avoid probate? And Jonathan and I, we have a little bit of free time, but we haven't figured out how to cram in going to law school and that free time there. And it gets back to that jack of all trades, master of none, like I was talking with Mark. This is a great thing that we can bring these people like yourself from Eidelman Law Firm, the estate planning attorneys, in to the meeting and then continue the conversation instead of pushing someone off to go have the conversation elsewhere. Then like you said, when those documents get done, sometimes you need to retitle accounts because some people have trusts that have no assets in them, nothing's titled to go to them, and it's these pretty papers that they've paid lots of money to have, but they really don't know, or they didn't really execute them correctly. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, one thing I've noticed with a lot of the advisors that we work with up here is that you guys have a lot of, horror stories of what, can go wrong and what does go wrong with folks. Because a lot of times the trust, like you say, are created and it's just an empty envelope. It doesn't have anything in it that the trust actually owns because they did not get all that information set up. So we meet with a lot of folks who have switched over to Market Advisory Group who have had a trust in the past, and I ask them, what's in your trust, and they don't know. And a lot of times there aren't things in the trust, or maybe their house was transferred into the trust and they didn't even realize it, or they have, they don't know who their successor trustees are. They don't know who the key people are, and it's really a disservice to them that they have this and they can't explain what it is. They don't know the assets that are in the trust. And, when I'm looking through them, there's a lot of questions of, well, was your personal property transferred into the trust, which is a very basic first step. But a lot of times it's not evident from the trust documents that they have that was done. So a lot of times we're having to recreate documents to make sure that they have the assets into the trust that need to be in the trust. The other key piece of it is making sure that beneficiaries on like retirement accounts and those types of things have been set up as well, so that when they pass away, especially if it's not a spouse that is going to, that it's set up so that it would go to the trust.
Yeah, I find that second step is probably, like you were talking about there, that's probably the more common one that I think gets missed because, and I can see why. I mean, put yourself in the person's shoes that's going to get this estate plan, or they're needing this estate plan or the trust. They've gone to their advisor referred them to someone else. So because they want to make sure they have an estate plan, they actually follow through and they go see that person, even though kind of they're lost and they're having to do it on their own. They meet with the attorney, they talk with the attorneys, they draft these documents, they get their pretty papers, but then that's normally when the ball gets dropped. Normally they don't take those pretty papers back to the financial advisor or wherever they have those accounts and update those beneficiaries to the trust. And normally it just stays the same there. And you and I have seen it, unfortunately, time and time again, where because the retirement system is broken the way it is, it places all the responsibility on the retiree. And they don't know what they need to do with these pretty papers. They're like, well, they just, in the back of their mind, they're like, well, we've got that checked off the list. Now we don't have to worry about that. But there's more to it than that. And it changes too as it goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah. And a lot of it is, the review that's done, because sometimes a financial advisor may only see a part of the picture, or, especially with older generations, we notice that they don't want to always disclose everything. And so that's part of the review that has to be done is, if a person has created a trust and they've still got, $100,000 in CDs that are still just in their name, or they've got a trading account that they use, maybe they're doing some trading on their own separate from their advisor, is all of those accounts should be owned by the trust. It makes it a lot easier for them. You were talking, I think, earlier about simplification and trying to, how do I consolidate these things down? Well, the trust is one way to kind of do that and to take advantage of some of those things.
But only if you've done it with the right way, or maybe a better way to say that was this: only if you've completely done everything you need to do there. And it's tough. It's a challenge for someone to do that on their own if they're not versed in all these things. And worse yet, you and I know that there's some companies out there that there's more to just your estate plan than a trust. But some of these companies out there, they're not recognizing power of attorneys that are older than 5 years, which is just ridiculous. And this is the kind of challenges people find themselves in if they're trying to navigate this on their own.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we do as well with the clients at Market Advisory Group, is part of what their experience with the company is that they're able to come back and meet with the estate planning attorneys every few years and kind of make sure those documents are taken in place. One thing we haven't really touched on, and you'll probably talk with Joshua here in a little bit about it, is, how do the taxes, are there changes because items are in a trust? How do these things all come into play? What if I've got, income with respect to a decedent or something like that, which is a horrible term that nobody wants to hear, but it's having that tax understanding of what are these things going to do, that all plays into the picture as well.
It's so true, Doug. The system is broken, guys. I say it all the time. And if you're out there navigating this on your own, or worse yet, trying to piece it together with all the different advisors, and you're trying to be the person, the middleman that's relaying all this information, there's a lot of room for things to get missed, let alone not even touched. And if you're worried that could be you, reach out right now and schedule a 15-minute call at 833-MAG-REPORT. Or that number again is 833, the letters MAG, for Market Advisory Group Report. Or you can go over to our website at retirehour.com or marketadvisorygroup.com and schedule that 15-minute phone call with us just to see if you could benefit from coming in, or maybe learning more, or maybe just have a quick question that you need to get off your chest. Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back with our lead tax advisor, Joshua Sikora, right after this. Welcome back into Retire Hour, the weekly show that helps you stay up to date on all things retirement, not just the investments, because I'm a financial advisor, but really, I was going to say I'm just a pretty face, but this is radio. You wouldn't know that.
No, you're like the ringmaster at the circus, right?
I'm the circus.
And you're just kind of, all right, this one do that one, this one do this. And
it's a little bit of like a traffic cop, because I will tell people, think of me almost like a customer service relationship manager. I'm helping you when you have these questions. I know who to pull in at the time when it does, because this can be really, retirement is it's supposed to be a happy time, but it can somewhat be overwhelming when you don't know all the things you don't know.
Right. And nobody wants to retire and take on a part-time job of figuring out these things themselves.
That's so true. So this week, we're going to talk about how to choose a tax preparer. 316-803-1040. That's your number.
That is my number. But to be fair, I mean, if all of our listeners called in, we'd be pretty overwhelmed. And
that's true. They tell me over 150,000 people a month watch the TV show. We don't have ratings on the radio show yet, but if 150,000 people watch our television show, I can only imagine that amount or more listen to the radio show.
Right. Because you can't you can't watch TV in the car while you're driving.
You're not supposed to. Yeah. So what would be your advice on how to choose someone to help you preparing your taxes? You don't want to go to that website and do it for free by February, whatever.
You know what? You sure can. But the downside there is that you are your own tax advisor. So then if you don't know the answers to questions, all you have to look to is that person in the mirror, and that can get pretty scary pretty quick.
Well, you met with that 92-year-old guy last week that came in and talked to me, and I'm like, no, this is really a tax question. And he was doing his taxes online, but they didn't even know how to do it.
Right.
And this stuff's so screwy. So how would you suggest people go out there finding someone to help them with their return?
Yeah. So, you know what, if you just go and search in your favorite search engine, you'll find tons of people. And if you ask anybody they'll know, they'll always know somebody. But there's a few things to look for as red flags of who to avoid. So, for example, if they don't have a preparer ID number with the IRS, that is a big red flag, because it's a very low barrier to entry. It's easy to get that number. So if someone doesn't have that is a big red flag.
That's the P10, right?
It's called a P10. That's right.
And that's not like a Social Security number.
No,
it's like,
we used to have to put our own socials on there as the preparer, and they decided that wasn't such a good idea. So they started issuing they're called P10s. And
so that's something that they means, I don't want to say they're registered with the IRS, but they have a number with the IRS to do returns.
That's right. Think of it almost like a signature.
And so what if someone's because you and I've seen this, we've seen other quote unquote tax preparers out there go and buy the software at the store or use the online software, and they're charging their clients money, but then they're using the software that they're not supposed to do that with.
That's right. And then you'll know that's the case because they'll say somebody prepared my return for me, but the return will say it's self-prepared. And so in the industry, we call that a ghost preparer. That is very dangerous. Those are the type of preparers who typically, or not typically, but they are known to inflate losses on returns, create maybe fake businesses that have losses that then you're signing off on saying, yeah, this is my return. And you don't know what's in there, and you're signing off on a whole bunch of fraud. And
so number one tip is make sure the preparer has a P10 number because that means they're legit, or they're legit enough, too legit to quit, maybe is the way to say that. No?
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
So, and then back to kind of where you're saying, if they don't have that P10 number, or if it looks self-prepared, like you said, those are the ones that are kind of, because I mean, basically, they're not following the rules in the first place, so they're not probably going to follow the other rules.
That's right. So that's where we circle back to your first piece of advice, 316-803-1040.
That's their number here. But really, to me, you need more than just a tax preparer. You need a tax advisor.
Right. A tax preparer is just keeping score at the end of the game. You need someone, telling you what plays to run. Yeah, so
did you just do a sports ball metaphor?
I did do a sports ball metaphor.
If you out there, if you're thinking to yourself, man, I have a tax preparer, I don't have a tax advisor, you might need to rethink who you're using there, because if you're not getting tax advice on what you need to be doing before the end of the year happens, right now, like Joshua said, you're just working with someone that's recording the after fact. It's almost like they're coming in after the comets hit the earth, and they're just recording history at that point.
You need to get you an Andy Reid is what you need.
You need to get you an Andy Reid is what you need. That's right. And if you don't have an Andy Reid on your tax team, reach out and call us at 833-MAG-REPORT, or that number again is 833-MAG-REPORT.
Unless otherwise indicated, all client names have been changed to protect their identities. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The content provided is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns are not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. No legal or tax advice is provided. Always consult with a tax professional. Legal services are offered by Edelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not in any way refer to investment advisory products. Rates and guarantees provided by insurance products and annuities are subject to the financial strength of the issuing insurance company, not guaranteed by any bank or the FDIC. The guest commentators featured in this show are not investment advisor representatives of Foundations and do not provide advisory services. Market Advisory Group does have several investment advisor representatives that can provide such services. This is not endorsed or affiliated with any U.S. government agency, the Social Security Administration, or associated with any federal Medicare program. We do not offer every plan available in your area. Any information we provide is limited to those plans we do offer in your area. Please contact Medicare.gov or 1-800-MEDICARE to get information on all of your options. A Roth conversion may not be suitable for your situation. The primary goal in converting retirement assets into a Roth IRA is to reduce the future tax liability on the distributions you take in retirement or on the distributions of your beneficiaries. The information provided is to help you determine whether or not a Roth IRA conversion may be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Please review your retirement savings, tax, and legacy planning strategies with your legal/tax advisor to be sure a Roth IRA conversion fits into your planning strategies. All rights reserved.